In his legendary book, The War of Art, Stephen Pressfield writes, "The professional arms himself with patience, not only to give the stars time to align in his career, but to keep himself from flaming out in each individual work. He knows that any job, whether it's a novel or a kitchen remodel, takes twice as long as he thinks, and costs twice as much. He steels himself at the start of a project, reminding himself it is the Iditarod, not the 60-yard dash. He conserves his energy. He prepares his mind for the long haul." End quote. I've personally met very few artists who embody and practice that attitude quite as well or as consistently as Christopher Williams. Like the professional in Pressfield's book, Chris does the work of being an artist. Little to no flash, though there's definitely some pizzazz on display when he's playing that hand drum. No complaining, though he can clearly articulate the difficulty of life as a full-time artist. Little to nothing extra, just the songs, which 14 projects later are better than they've ever been. This is my conversation with singer, songwriter, and percussionist Christopher Williams. Check it out.
I was just talking to someone about that. It might have been yesterday, about the weird relationship you have if you're a public person. The weird relationship you have with a tribe of people who you could be 21 years in, 22 years into a career and have 15, what are you at, 17 projects?
12, 13, 14.
Full
12
length.
of my own, but 14 total.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And still, there's someone who lives in Seattle
Yep.
who's this record
Play the one from college, 1994.
from 1994.
The song about the bus.
That's yours. And it's not just that's my favorite of yours. That's actually who you are to them.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's
I often will respond, I've put out 11 albums since then.
I've done
And
some.
they say, really? Oh, I didn't know. I'm like, wow.
You're that happy with that song. It's just I'm so glad you're that connected to that one jam. But there's been some work since then. It's pretty good. You should maybe check it out.
I think it's a little better.
Does your Spotify not say you might also like?
Maybe it does. I don't know.
I don't know.
It's so bad.
How long have you been here now in Nashville?
16 years.
Jeez.
I know. Coming up, it'll be 17 next month.
Wow.
That's insane.
Does it feel like home?
Mm-hmm. It does.
When did that happen?
Probably when we bought the house.
Really?
I think so. I mean, yeah, because that was 2.5 years. I always feel like it takes a good 3 years to feel settled in a place, especially with coming and going as much as we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, since we've had the home and we've remodeled it and all that stuff, it feels like, I love coming back to this place. And then community and all that stuff surrounding it is probably a different part of that, but it feels
Meaning
like,
what?
Meaning the wrestle of finding community, being community, how difficult it is, how challenging, how beautiful, how it's ebbed and flowed. That has constantly ebbed and flowed in the 16 years.
Yeah.
And
because the group of people has ebbed and flowed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in some ways, you can't make that be your home.
You can't make people be your home.
Yeah.
Why?
Because we'd be constantly disappointed. That's a pretty
Would you like
encouraging.
the sad answer or the saddest answer?
Exactly. No, I think, people obviously make your home feel like home. But I think it maybe a less depressing answer is it's all a part of what it feels like. But I think as I've gotten older and kind of built this space that is my actual home, it feels like, oh yeah, this is home. And I've never been home as long as I've been home in this stretch.
Right. So
Of this
16,
season.
17 years here. Before you were in New York, you've been in Boston, you've been in Seattle. How did it actually go? Because where were you born?
Born in New York, lived outside the city for most of my life. I went to college in Pennsylvania.
Where'd you go to school?
Bucknell University.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't remember what you studied.
I don't either. It really doesn't matter at this point. I was a religion major with a studio art and sociology minor, which is really useful, all of that.
Super forgetful.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, great.
And then I picked up, grunge was popular, so I was like, I'm going to get the heck out of here. And I moved to Seattle because it was the tail end of grunge, and I was like, that looks like a cool place. And I wanted to reboot. So
You were right.
I was right. I wore a lot of flannel. My hair was long. I fit in, except for I didn't play grunge music.
Yeah, you played the djembe.
I played not yet.
Oh, really?
No, that didn't happen until after. Yeah, that didn't happen until I moved back to Boston, if I remember correctly. So I moved to Seattle, and then after 4 years, I had some opportunities in Boston. So I moved to Boston for 8, and then I moved here for coming up 17
Wow.
years. Yeah.
Do you miss one of those places more so?
No.
Really?
No, I miss the mountains of Seattle, and I miss the ocean in Boston, because we don't have either of those things here. If you
No,
didn't
you
know,
really don't.
here in Nashville, it's don't have those.
You have a Parthenon, but you don't have any actual hills.
We have Athena.
Yes.
Praise Athena. The massive sculpture of Athena.
Does New York still feel like home?
Mm-mm.
Even when you go back?
Never. Yeah. I have friends that still live there from high school, and I'm like, I don't understand how you do that.
Really?
Yeah. But we moved out of the house that I grew up in. My mom, we helped her move out 4, 5, 6 years ago, something like that, after my dad died. And so it just, it doesn't feel like home.
Huh.
Yeah. And Boston, there's part of me that when I go back to Seattle and I go back to Boston, it's like, oh, this feels like home, but it feels like home in a totally different life.
Like you changed.
Yeah, I've changed, and I'm like, I remember this place, and I remember certain things, and I remember people, and there's a glimmer of like it feeling like home, but
it's more like nostalgia than it is.
Yeah. Yep.
Like an actual identification.
Yep.
Yeah.
And this place, this is the longest place I've ever lived, it might actually be the longest place I've ever lived at this point in Nashville.
Yeah, if it's 17 years. Well,
Even my childhood home that I moved to after I was 7. Yeah, this is the longest place. Oh, interesting.
yeah, look at that.
How about that?
All of a sudden after 17 years.
Exactly. Meteoric rise to fame in 20 years.
In 20 years.
love
That
those stories.
nostalgic association with places, I mean, you didn't even have to live somewhere to have it, right? I mean, like, if you travel enough,
Yep.
which you have, like, there are places that just feel that way.
Yep.
Like, yeah, I have a sense of belonging here. It's not like in my body, intrinsic, fundamental, but I have it.
Yeah.
And it's more like the nostalgia. Like, it could be like a great event, great meal, great conversation, great show,
Yep.
or whatever. And there's like this. DC is that way for me, and some of it is like I like the noise and the buzz of DC, and I really really like that. But also like I've just had some really significant moments in DC. Like what was the name of the coffee house? Ebenezer's.
Yeah, we've had a few moments there.
Yeah, I mean, just it's like, and it was there was a stretch there for like 8 or 9 years. I would play a gig at Ebenezer's every year.
Yep.
And it was a great gig every year.
Yep.
And I had like a tribe, and it's like I'm playing a show in DC, and like the people who are in the show work on the Hill. I'm like,
Right.
oh my gosh. And it's like I don't actually fundamentally belong in DC, but every time I was there, I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
I fit in this place, kind of. So you can kind of have that sense of nostalgia.
Yeah, and it's funny in this season of COVID, of not traveling, like I'm beginning to miss. Not beginning. I am missing those places
Oh yeah,
a lot. Of like, oh yeah, I go here at this time of year. I go here at this time of year. I play this stage. I go to get this piece of food after the show, and like, yeah, gosh, I think that's really beginning to catch up.
yeah.
To me right now.
It's part of why I decided to do this here is to travel to Nashville.
Yep.
Because we could have been on the phone, we could have done the thing over Skype and like made it happen that way. It would have been fine.
Yeah.
But outside of the fact like face-to-face interviews are just feel different. The conversation's more conversational, but the conversation is more conversational. But also, just being on the road, like doing the thing, like getting in line, finding my seat on the airplane, that feeling right when the airplane tips and like I can fall asleep if I want to or not, or hotels, rental cars, the whole thing. I'm like, that sense of home.
Yeah. It's a bizarre sense of home.
But I love it.
I don't even know if it's a sense of home. It's what you and I have known for 20 plus years.
Yes.
And it's more of like a comfort.
Yeah.
Which is bizarre because it's not comfortable at all. Any of it. But just the idea of we're getting to go be face to face with people, have conversations, sort of allow the spirit to move. Crazy things happen. We stay up late. We hang out with people. Like there's that interaction, and I'm craving right now.
When's the last time you were actually out?
I did 2 shows in October, 2 outdoor shows in Dallas, and those are the first 2 shows since the second week of March, right before everything shut down. I was in Dallas. No, I was in Texas. So
That's been a minute.
Yeah, and I was like, oh gosh, I don't know how I feel about this, getting on a plane and doing it, and then the second night I was like, oh yeah, I love this. I remember this. I remember this feeling. I remember this. I love this.
Yeah.
And in some senses it was a teaser because I don't think I'm going to get to do it for a while. And I didn't think I was going to get to do it for a whole year, March to March. But I don't know.
Yeah, it's the missing of it. I'm doing a few things here and there, but like the fact that it's not reliable, it's really disorienting.
Totally.
For sure. Do you feel healthier for not traveling?
Yes.
In what way?
I've shed some lbs, which is great. That's what we say around this house. Shed some lbs.
You're physically healthier.
I'm physically healthier, and I would say mentally healthier. This is the most amount of time that my wife and I have ever spent together in the history of our relationship.
Really?
Yeah. Because I'm not going, she's not going. We've slept in the same bed for I don't know how many nights in a row, which is amazing.
Huh.
And obviously health is going to come from that, because there's a lot of unhealth that can come from the coming and the going and the handing off and the you take that business conversations.
Right.
Where you lose the intimacy of like actually being face to face.
Huh.
So I feel healthier in that way. Healthier in terms of community as well. One of our sort of prayers of this time was to be close to our neighborhood as much as was something we've longed for. And we're like, we're being granted a gift right now to be present with those who are our next door neighbors. And so we've sort of embraced that, which has been really sweet.
Your physical neighbors, the folks who are actually in your neighborhood. Mm-hmm. What's that look like for you to do?
We early on, when our church stopped meeting, we were like, this stinks. We hate this. And so we decided that we would host, we would just sort of have front yard singing. And so we just told all the neighbors. And so we started in April and we went all the way to the end of June, and then it was way too hot in July.
Oh, really?
So we took the month off. But yeah, people would just show up with their blankets and lawn chairs. I put together a set of music for an hour. We'd sing old hymns. My neighbor, a few houses up the street, Clyde, who's in his mid-70s, was struggling with some health stuff earlier on, and he got out of the hospital, and the next Sunday he was sitting next to me, and we were singing old Gaither tunes together. So we just set up the sound system, and I make song sheets, old school, and we hand them out, and folks sing and sit in nature, and then the kids run around afterwards. It's really been beautiful. A huge gift for us of just being able to worship with our neighbors, which is something we've never done before.
You said, was it 11 weeks in a row of online shows? Which is that's more time. I think I'm getting this right about you. That's like more time and more concentrated effort than you've spent for the most part in terms of like online presence, like being online.
Yep.
You're not like a happy Facebooker.
No, I sort of did the live streams like every 2 weeks in the beginning of this crazy thing.
Uh-huh.
And then I was like, this is just feels, I don't like this. And I thought, what can I do to sort of engage my brain and my heart in a different way than just playing songs and trying to be funny.
Right.
in front of the computer.
Yes.
Which is always a great thing to attempt. So I thought, what if I went back, and I have a tendency to jump onto something and go, yeah, that's a great idea, and jump in and go, oh my gosh, what did I just do? 11 weeks straight. Holy cow. Yeah. And it was promoting it every day, which I probably went overboard on that, creating videos. But it was a way to sort of actively engage my heart and my brain. And so I went through and played my entire catalog of albums, except for my first one that we already discussed from 1994 that my mom really loves. And nobody else, except for that one guy in Seattle.
The guy in Seattle and your mom. Yeah.
And so I skipped over that one. And invited in sort of strategically and prayerfully invited in 4, 5, 6 people to be my audience while I played through. So I'd take each album, play through the thing from top to bottom, have a select group of people in the audience that I felt like I was supposed to invite, so that I was playing live to people plus to the computer and those folks. And then I kind of did this crazy thing where I went through and reread every journal I could find.
Really?
And pulled out, which was mind-blowing. It was
like your personal recorded, this is my life journal.
Yeah.
Wow. Dear Diary.
Dear Diary. And pulled out things that I felt like would be poignant or funny or give us sort of a snapshot of where I was at that time in my life to help bridge the songs from song to song. Instead of me having to come up with funny stories on the spot, I was like, let's go and try to dig in to remember some of those things that I've forgotten. And it was really a blessing, as much as it was a pain because it was a ton of work to go through. But it was a blessing for my heart to remember people and places and memories and, oh man, I totally forgot about that. Things that would give context to each album and where I was at, but also just remind me, kind of what came out of it was just reminding me of God's faithfulness through 26 years of doing this.
Yeah.
And it was entertaining. Like there were a number of times where my mom would text afterwards like, wow, I learned so much. Like, that's great. Thanks.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And pulling out pictures. So it was called Throwback Thursday. And so each day I would post a picture from that era, kind of giving a snapshot. So it was a really cool journey, a long journey.
Were there things about it that were not comfortable or not enjoyable? Because looking back over 26 years of doing anything,
yeah,
I mean, it's like you come face to face, I would assume, with I don't know if I want to say, I don't know how to talk about this yet, like versions of yourself or expressions of who you were or just who you were at the time, like in song or much less in your journal, that like I would assume there was stuff that you're like, ugh.
Oh, dude. There's a lot of stuff I didn't read, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a lot of like, wow, I've been struggling with that for 26 years. Or, wow, I totally forgot about that and how that happened. And or even a song of like, I had to go back and remember, like teach myself my own songs from the earlier albums. And like this third record, I did alternate tunings. I was like, I have no idea what these chords are. Absolutely. So I had to go back and...
Who wrote this mess?
Exactly. But some of the cool things was like, I'd go back and I'd play a song and go, wow, that was a good song.
Yeah.
It was a good song that I don't play anymore and kind of felt like there were a couple of them like, yeah, I didn't give that song the credit that it deserved, because I was like, that was actually, yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
That was a good song. So it really, overall, the whole thing was more encouraging than anything else, of like, wow, God, you have been so faithful.
Yeah.
To love this
and what a trip
mess.
to give yourself a trip and a gift, to give yourself the permission to look back at you and to say that to your, in whatever way it's actually emotionally possible, to say that to your former self that still lives somewhere in your guts. Like, hey, bro, that wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
There's that moment, right? It's like after the record, and you kind of find your set, and there are the songs and the stories you tell. They're like, these are the good ones, and then this is like, oh crap, I don't want to think about this song.
But I had to play every one of them.
Yes, so then you have to look back and be like, hey, this is not a bad song.
Yeah,
like you did fine. Sort of in the way that like an older mentor would come along and be like, hey, Chris, this is good. Give yourself more grace.
To remember, dude, you're 50 now, but you were 26 at one point, and you wrote 26-year-old songs.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's where you were at that time. I mean, I think every songwriter would say when their album comes out, I'm already done with it before it comes out. Like, because it's a snapshot. It's a moment of time. Like, that was then, and 6 months later, I'm in a different place, but now I have to play these songs for 2 years until I write another batch of songs. And I think if you can have a healthy outlook, and even in a non-artist way of looking at a journal entry or looking back at something, like, that's where I was, and here's where I am now. And I had a friend who said, if you can't look back at 5 years ago and say, wow, I was an idiot, in a healthy sort of way, and look where I am now, that's a problem.
That's good.
You know what I mean? If I haven't grown, right? If I haven't grown in a year, 5 years, 6 months, whatever, then something needs to change.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite songs overall, but definitely one of my favorite songs of his, Chance the Rapper's 56 or 65th in Ingleside. And the line, all my rhymes was about detention.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's goofy now, but at the time it's like, that's your life. Yeah. And to be able to be like, hey, that's goofy. Right. That you're writing, but if that's what you had, that's what you had. Yeah. Doing it online, playing to some degree to the computer, but you're not really, right? It's like, excuse me, like you've got it, you've got your computer, you have your setup, it's mics, but you have an audience of folks and they're responding over Facebook, etc. Talk about, you're a face-to-face guy. You're more of a phone, like, conversation person. You're not like you'll text, but like for you, like personal interaction, face-to-face, eye contact, presence. Not just COVID era, but like life now in general, 80 some odd % of our social interactions are like device facilitated. Yep. I'm reading Cal Newport's most recent book called Digital Minimalism. And I mean, part of what he gets after is the way the devices themselves, the platforms, alter the nature. They don't just facilitate the same relationship. They change the nature of the relationship. Yeah, absolutely. Do you find yourself, are you comfortable at all with like online relationships? Is it the same world? Is it just like a necessary thing that's like, because you're a public person, you have to have a Facebook account and have some Instagram stuff going on? Is there a sense of connectedness at all for you there, or really none? Like, what's it like for you to live online?
Honestly, I hate it.
Like the root for you is like negative.
Yeah, mostly. Yeah. I think that it's a necessary evil in the same way that creating digital music is a necessary evil, and that I'm not making any money off of, really a lot of money off of digital. But I have to do it. I have to be on Spotify, because if I'm not, I really will reach nobody. Yeah. So it's that sort of like, I have to be on Facebook to kind of create a connection. And part of the 11-week thing was to try to re-engage with folks who still only listen to the 1994 record, of like, how do I bring those folks along on a journey? So I'm it's a necessary thing, but I don't really like it. I like you said, I love the face to face. I love sitting across the table. I love talking, engaging, voice to voice or face to face, and so I'm honestly I'm kind of excited to see when and if this COVID season ends, if the pendulum will swing back towards or away from devices, because we've been so forced to be on them in this season with Zoom and all the social media platforms. Of like, will people clamor to be face to face when they can actually step away from their device because they can actually see people? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, I hope that's the case, because in some senses I feel like we've gotten so far down the rabbit hole that it's somewhat disturbing. And I think the front yard worship thing and that elements like that have, or things that have happened in that season of like, okay, there's a touch point of like, this is how we were supposed to be interacting. This is how we were made. And the digital thing is necessary, but it will never replace face to face.
I enjoy online interactions and relationships, but it isn't the same. And when I don't enjoy it, I want it. It's because, well, at least in part. Yeah, when I feel it, when there's tension, it's usually because I'm expecting or wanting something about it to be like a replication of like in presence, physical, eye to eye.
Yeah.
It's just not like, and I don't think I'm a different person online per se, but like the limitations and the opportunities are just, they're so broadly different. It's a different way to be in relationship with folks, and it's so new. Yeah, it's still new. You know, I say this all the time. Like, Facebook is 16, not quite 17 years old. Mm-hmm. Of course, it's a freaking emotional disaster. Yeah. So was I at 16, when I was 17.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Right. So, and then there's all of us online are in a sense 17. Yeah. Because that's what the platform allows for.
I've never thought about it that way. That's good.
So yes, we are the beginning of our adolescent, just batshit craziness, because like that's when it starts. Yeah. Like, you know. Yeah. Is at 17.
I think the exhausting thing for me is just kind of creating content, which I'm amazed by your gift to do that. Like it seems like you thrive in that world of constantly posting and thought-provoking and engaging. Like, I'm not good at that.
I talk a lot.
You do, but even like, but just your posts are so thoughtful and engaging, and I want to be able to do that, and I'm not very good at it. Yeah. And so I wrestle out of like, okay, that's okay. Yep. But I'd rather engage like we're doing right now and sitting across. Yeah. Like that to me is
more the thing.
Right. But that's not how you grow a music career, I guess. I don't know.
Well, you've done just fine.
I've done something.
You've done something.
Yeah.
You and I had a conversation the other day talking about, metrics and success and what have you. We were talking, here we are towards the tail end of 2020.
2020 wrapped.
2020 wrapped, and that Spotify. Actually, the two things. My a friend who doesn't use Spotify, they're just music listener. She posted a meme of like iTunes looking through a window out at all the people in the street with their Spotify, wrapped stuff, because like iTunes doesn't do it. Some folks don't use Spotify, but for those do, and I use Spotify too. But yeah, like you're down at the end of the year, and as listeners, people are posting like, here's my top 10 list, and they're tagging artists, and like, And then artists are like, hey, here's my 56 million streams. And you're like, holy crap. Like, and like, I don't see anywhere near that. Like, I did. I looked it up. I was like, I wouldn't post this.
Like, it's exactly what I was like.
Like, that's cool. Like 80 some odd countries. That's neat. And then I was like, I'm not going to post that though. And some of it is a matter of like, I don't really want to participate in it because there's an element of it that is like, I get it if you're Chance or if you're Katy Perry or if you're Taylor Swift, where it's like, you say thank you in this way.
Right.
Because yes, like those folks, like this is sustaining your career in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And that you say thank you to your people. And like, I appreciate that. But that, a lot of the folks in the long tail where it's like, here's your 14,000.
Right.
Not even 14 million. Here's your 14,000 streams. Here's your 56,000 streams, which is not 56 million.
Yep.
It like what's bonkers is like it's still 56,000 of anything.
Sure.
And what a freaking trip it is.
Yeah.
To look at what are actually decent sized numbers and be like, nah.
Yeah,
like
I fell down the rabbit hole the other day, which is why we were talking about this. Of like, I was comparing myself to my other indie artist friends who were posting and like the jumps that they had from last year, and I'm like, yeah, no, I didn't have that at all.
Right.
And immediately, just shame-filled. Like, I suck. Why am I doing this? I'm going to Home Depot to get a job. Like. It was so discouraging.
Right. And again, here's the thing: is like, 26 years.
Oh yeah.
Of making music, of making a living. It's not even just you're able to do it.
Yes.
Making a freaking living making music. 26 years. Most cats don't get through 2 years or 3.
Yeah.
26 years, and still the numbers will come and punch you right in the freaking throat.
Yeah.
And try to end your career.
Yep.
Right like that.
Just like that.
How do you, and like when you think about success, your success, like in what way do you measure that for you? Like not just like how do you stay positive? Because that's not really the game. Because if the game, if you're in more than 4 or 5 years and you're like, I'm just trying to stay positive, like, buddy, you lost.
Yeah,
like
exactly. You're not going to make it.
If you're trying to stay positive, you're losing, and you should probably just quit.
Yeah,
because you don't want to be there. But having an actual metric for success, like targets to hit, like here's what's happening, and now I know I don't have to stay positive because I'm actually hitting my goals. And like what does it look like now? What has it looked like? How have you marked success over the years, and how do you do it now?
I was running this morning and thinking, man, if I can make it through this COVID season and still be playing music, I can get through anything.
Come on now. That's good.
I mean, that really was like...
Yeah, that's real.
That is totally real. Because I make my living playing shows. And if I'm not playing shows, I'm not making a living. So I'm not playing shows right now. But God continues to provide, which is amazing. So I think... What you said though is to look at doing 11 weeks, see God's faithfulness, know it, and a month later see numbers pop up that just make me like spiral downhill. Yeah, it's so frustrating. Yeah, and I know that I'm going to work through it. I think my sort of gauge for success is exactly just that. I've made a living. I'm doing what I love to do. Yes. I'm blessing people, I'm challenging people, I'm leading people, I'm making good art, and really that's it. That is my sort of basics for success, or for thinking I'm successful. I think early on in my career I had more goals of like, I want to try to reach here, I want to try to play this room, I want to try to play this many people, and sort of, I guess through maturity and getting older and not really caring one of those things, I just kind of came to the, realization of like, no, I can say that I've made music for 26 years and I've not worked any other job since then. Yeah. And it's still working. Yeah. Amen. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And that's it. So but it's a constant wrestle. I mean, it has always been that comparative the comparative insecure gene that most songwriters and artists carry of,
Yes.
you know, comparing ourselves to others and feeling insecure about where we are. I just wish I could get rid of that some days.
Yeah, no way.
I mean, but to look back at, like, even in the 16, 17 years I've lived here, where I was when I moved here,
Yeah.
and where I am now, worlds difference.
Yes.
Like, I don't really care. And a lot of the people that I compare myself to aren't playing music anymore.
Right?
Which is like, okay,
Yeah.
why are you doing that?
If you've been around the podcast for any amount of time, you know that I ask almost all my guests about their experience of life online. Part of why I do that is because I'm in a lot of conversations about the impact that online life has on our happiness. We look around at people in our similar stations of life and wonder why we are not there. And that can cause a bit of dysmorphia, a sense of displacement from the life we're actually living. And maybe you're like a lot of folks who are struggling with that, or maybe you're just facing depression, or you're stressed, you're anxious. Maybe you got some trauma you don't know what to do with. BetterHelp is actually available right now to you, and it is more affordable than offline counseling. In fact, if you jump right now to betterhelp.com/@sea, that's ATSEA, they'll give you 10% off your first month just because I sent you. Therapy through BetterHelp is also more conveniently located on the device you are probably using to listen to this podcast. Everything you share is confidential, and if you don't click well with the therapist you're initially paired with, you can try another therapist. That's not a ploy. That's them and me taking your mental health seriously. Jump to betterhelp.com/@sea. That's ATSEA. You'll be joining over 1 million people, including me, who've taken this step in the direction of health because I want to make a better offering of myself to the world I'm given to.
Conversation I had with a client that I coach who's also a songwriter, and he's been at it for 12, 15 years, right? Similar kind of thing in terms of like new phase of life, COVID shutting down, because same, he's like workhorse, like doesn't like doing stuff online. He wants to be in a room with a guitar. He prefers to travel with a band, likes the community orientation of the thing.
Yeah.
Can't do any of that stuff. Like all those things are gone. So he's in this like reinvention phase or moment. And like when we first started talking, like he was in the dumps. And he was like, and the word failure kept coming up, and I was like, hey, let's stop for a second. Bro, you've been doing this for almost 15 years.
Right.
Like, it's not a game. I get that it's not a game, but like, let's just talk about it for a second as if it is. You won.
Right.
Like, you freaking won. You know what I mean? No one does, like, almost regardless of what career it is. Like, anyone who does any kind of a career for a decade.
Yeah.
I mean, someone who's a teacher in a classroom. You get through 10 years of public education. It's like,
yeah,
homie, you won.
Sure.
Like, if it's a game, you won. How fragile that sense of like vocational place is in a human soul. Like that it can be stripped away
in
like
an instant.
that in an instant. They can have all this evidence to the contrary. That like, no, like literal thousands of people care about what you do. And then like a meme pops up and ruins your freaking career in a day. It's brutal.
Social media.
But living here,
Yeah.
Comparison kills. It just does. Comparison just wrecks lives, undoes marriages, undoes human psychologies. It just kills things. It almost never does anything positive. Just raw comparison. Living in Nashville can't make that easier. I was telling another friend yesterday, the day before, like part of the reason I stopped coming to Nashville is because I would leave here feeling like trash.
Yeah.
Like every time, I bought a house in California on making music.
Yeah.
And I would be boarding a flight from Nashville to fly back home. A ticket that I was able to purchase because I make a living making music. And I'm getting on the plane, but like, I suck at this. I'll never be any good. And I'm thinking about like, and the town like had that vibe. Talk about living here, these 16 years, the choice to be here, the career move, the formation of community, and then the thing you said earlier, like it's changed over time.
Yeah.
And some of that is because enough people failed.
Yeah.
Like enough people did not hit their targets and had to reorient what it meant to be successful. Talk about like being in this town, industry friendships, and like the actual formation of like beloved community, vulnerability. Because like you're not the kind of cat that goes to like, you know, movie town and is like, I'm a celeb, I'm gonna kick ass here. You're like, no, I want to do my work and I have friends.
Right. Yeah, I think that when I moved here, I was in a different place, obviously, in my early 30s, and was looking and striving for success.
Yeah.
And so I was much more apt to compare myself to others and very regularly think I needed to go to Home Depot and get a job. And nothing against Home Depot workers. I love Home Depot. I could get a job there because I spend so much money of my hard-earned money. I actually call it Home Deposit, not Home Depot.
Yes, because that's where all your money was going for a minute.
Exactly. So I think when I was in that phase, and then I had a chance to go out on the road with Jars of Clay, and sort of their time with them and our conversations and the venues we played, and just kind of opened the door to like, no, just make good music. Like find people that will appreciate it and respect it, and strive for that as opposed to like trying to be something or someone.
Yeah.
And obviously that's really difficult in this town. And so actually the word respect made me think of that. That was a big thing. It still is. It's not as big as it used to be, but a thing that drove me of like, I just want to be respected by my friends. Like,
that's good.
I mean, want to be respected by musical business people as someone who creates good art. And that's an important and a good thing to drive you. But when it sort of occupies everything,
yes,
then it becomes not a good thing.
Yeah.
And so in some senses over the last 16, 17 years, I sort of somewhat threw that out the window and just wanted to make good art. And I've stayed independent my whole career.
Yeah.
And somewhat by choice, but also I've cast some nets out there, and nothing's really come back. So I've sort of
even in terms of like a label deal and booking agents and all that.
Kind of. I've had those moments, and working with the Jars guys was great because they introduced me to a lot of folks, and so I followed up on those relationships, and then it sort of nothing really ever went anywhere. And I have a 10-year-old like you, and when he entered the picture, everything sort of shifted, and my priorities shifted of like, it's not so important to me to follow those things. I would rather put my efforts elsewhere.
The institutional market metrics.
Yes. Yeah.
Having a label deal.
Yep. And I never really wanted that. I think I've just always wanted to I want the music to be heard by as many people as possible, in whatever way that can happen. And obviously labels are helpful for that, but I've never really found, not always, but I've never really found those relationships that would help me get to that point. So I sort of had to dial back. Like I'm going to play for the people that I play for. And if it's 50 people a night and those 50 people are loving it and they buy some CDs, and I can walk away feeling really great about what I'm doing. If I'm doing the best that I can and creating good art and engaging people with an entertaining show that makes them lie, cry, laugh, all those things in the course of a night, and I walk away feeling like I did what I was supposed to do as best as I could, then I'll feel good.
Yeah, and I think that's the healthier. And I try not to make too many like sweeping generalizations about career and vocation and pathways, because it's not like everyone has a different path, but something along those lines. But approaching a label or approaching a publisher, like I think there is a wrong way to do it, and it is like if what I want is if I'm going to that label and hoping for that label deal because that's my target.
Right.
And when I get it, that's the thing that makes me feel like a success.
Right.
If that's my target, it's I got the label deal, I got the book contract. If the book contract is the target, I'm screwed.
Yeah.
Because the actual thing
Yep.
is that interaction with people, is that connection. I oftentimes go back to the Seth Godin notion that art is anything you create that facilitates a connection between people.
Yep.
So long as it's about the connection between people, then that's a metric that lasts over the course of time, and it's one I actually have control over, which is what makes the marketplace machinery necessary to begin with.
Yeah.
And I forget that, and so does the machine. The machine forgets.
Yeah.
You're only necessary insofar as you facilitate the connection between me and what I make and the people who want it for their lives.
Yeah.
If I can approach a label, or if I can approach a book deal, a publisher with what you said before, who can help me do what I do better and connect with more people? If that's the relationship, that's a healthy place to be. But if it's I've got this thing going and I need someone to verify that it's good.
Right.
And so, HarperCollins likes it. So if HarperCollins likes it, it must be good.
Right.
It's okay, HarperCollins and the 200 people who will buy it.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's and all 200 of those folks would have bought it anyways.
Yeah.
So HarperCollins didn't do anything for you if you don't already have that connection.
Yeah. I think also the second part of your question of community, part of the reason, I know we've talked about this before, but part of the reason that I moved here was not for the music business.
Yeah.
And I always sort of joke on stage that I've managed to avoid the music business very effectively in my 17 years of living here, which is partially a deflection of because it never happened, but also it's true. But I actually moved here because when I lived in Boston in my early 30s, kind of reached a place of I don't have the people that I need in my life. And I feel like I'm supposed to move to Nashville because I'm going to find those people, or more readily find those people.
Yes.
And so that was sort of the driving factor, and the fact that it's a great city. It's affordable. It was affordable once. And there's people who understand the life of a musician here more than any other place that I've lived is a huge benefit.
Yeah.
And so moving here sort of with a different perspective and a different drive of instead of going musically challenging, musically trying to strive for something, I'm actually want to strive for people. I want to bring people into my life. And that's been a crazy, beautiful journey from buying this house because some friends invited us into the neighborhood.
Yeah.
To starting a small group, planning a church, the small group imploding, us sort of floating for 2 years, and just this last year kind of resurfacing with a different group of people, which has been a really hard and beautiful, somewhat lonely, messy journey.
I try to push folks, clients, friends, in the direction of a career is, for the most part, if you're talented, if you have it in you, a career is something you can build kind of from wherever.
Yeah.
To some degree. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are definitely places where it's if you want to work in politics,
right?
Yeah, to some degree, you can do that kind of anywhere. If you but you spend some time in DC. If you're gonna do movies, yeah, to some degree you can do it anywhere. LA really is where you want to be. Yeah. Songwriting, LA or Nashville. I get, to some degree that's true. But bigger than all of that, it's if you can find or have people that you are willing to, that you feel connected to, move everything.
Yeah.
To live with the people that actually make you feel alive and give you a sense of rootedness, because you're gonna die at some point, and this is my 2 cents, you'll regret not having had time with people you really liked if you don't, and who liked you. You moved into this neighborhood on an invitation to be part of a community of people. It wasn't just you were house hunting and you found an affordable place. In the same way that moving to Nashville in general was to some degree a matter of I need to be and want to be around folks who get me.
Yeah.
And, musician friends. there's a really specific element to that for you coming into Creve Hall as a neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Tell that story a little bit and about the entrance in, and then like a little bit of like the disintegration, disillusionment, and rebuild.
Sure. We, I early 30s, living in Boston, hadn't found a community there. And I made all the excuses, and most of the excuses were just because I was not willing to let people in to my heart.
Personally.
Yeah. So I was really good at the surface and floating on the surface. And I was actually at a wedding of my friends there by myself because the girl that I was dating, it didn't work out. And so I was at a wedding, and when you're at a wedding by yourself, surrounded by people who are all having a blast, and you're completely lonely, it's a great time to have a little heart check-in time. And I remember standing in the back of the reception.
That's called catharsis.
Thank you.
Yes.
I remember standing back at reception, going, "Wow, this sucks," and I'm lonely, and all these people flew in from all over the country to celebrate my two friends. Who would do that for me if I were ever to find someone to get married? And I was like, I have no idea.
Whoa.
And it was a pretty humbling experience. And it was in that moment I was like, I got to reboot. I got to restart.
Yeah.
I got to find 5 guys that can speak into my heart and into my life. And I was like, and I got to get the heck out of Boston. So I picked up, I was like literally that day.
Wow.
So I came, found a place here.
That actual day.
I was like, yep, that's it.
Wow.
Done. So I made the decision, came down to Nashville, checked it out, rented a place. In the process, fell in love with a girl who didn't live here but lived in Baltimore, who is now my wife of many years. And we were on the road, and she wanted the same thing out of a community. She had a great community in Baltimore, and she said, I'm desiring the same thing as you, so I can come to you. And I was like, I can go anywhere. Like, I can do my job anywhere, like you said, as long as I have an airport and I can get to it. And so we decided, okay, we're coming here. And being on the road with Jars, and one of the families, the couples in that, were the family that said, hey, we want you to move into the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Were they and my friend Mitch and Jeannie and Matt and Christian, the other couple, decided that, hey, we want to live, this stinks, being across the city from each other. This is not community. We need to be like in proximity. So they sold both of their houses, found a realtor, and said, find us 2 houses within 3 houses of each other, at least.
Wow.
And so they moved into this neighborhood with the very specific intent of, we want to live together.
Yeah.
They didn't, one couple had 1 child, the other couple didn't have any at that point. And so out of that, they birthed a small group of people and said, we would love for you to be a part of this. Something cool God's building, and we want you to be in it. And we're like, great.
Like regular hangout meeting.
Let's do life
schedule.
together.
Yeah.
Yep. Once a week. Let's make meals. Let's help each other.
Yeah.
Let's walk through life together. And it was beautiful. And so we were driving around, killing time, found this house, just put it on the market. Mitch and Jeannie were like, we've looked at every single house in this neighborhood. You should buy this house. We're like, okay, great. And we just bought the house. Weren't looking to buy a house, weren't pre-approved for a loan. We put an offer in. We're like, this is the most ridiculous thing ever. And my wife's mom is a realtor, and so she walked us through. Suzanne would step outside and call, hey, what else should we do this? And she's like, don't say that. Don't say that. Say this, say this. And we walked through and we bought a house in like 24 hours. It was insane. And then shortly thereafter, this small group started meeting. It was beautiful, walking through life with these folks. But one of the things that happened, and you might be able to attest to this, is when you speak from something, you speak about something on stage in front of people as part of your story, which is a beautiful thing. What can happen sometimes is it can become an idol.
Yep.
And so community and this group, I now looking back can say it was an idol. I spoke of it in such a way that it was so much bigger than, it was a big thing in our life, and it was a beautiful thing, but in some ways it was blown out of proportion.
Fascinating.
And the amount of energy and goodness that I gave it, I think that's the right way to say it.
Sure.
And so when it imploded 4 years ago, it was devastating. And what happened was, without going into too much detail, we sort of kept meeting together, but none of us really showed up when we showed up.
Yeah.
And a lot of hurt happened. And then we spent about 6 to 9 months unpacking the entire 10-year history of the group, of like each iteration, like, okay, this family came in, this family came out, what happened there? Here's what happened. This hurt. This was beautiful. And it was a beautiful journey. And by the end, we were like, we're done. And we walked away. Too much.
Like it had its, the part of what it's like it had a season. Like you made like a monolith out of it.
Yeah.
Instead of like, this is a thing that has a time and a purpose, as it were.
Except that we were like, we're going to carry each other's coffins. That was like, we had put so much emphasis on it that we're like, this is life. This is it. This is the rest of our life, is this group of people. We're going to do it. And partially a beautiful thing based on, I had some friends out in the Northwest who have been in the same small group for 35 years.
Yeah.
I'm like, gosh, I want that. Like, I want that. I want that.
Sounds
history.
great.
Sounds great. And they have managed to do it, but I think they're a complete anomaly in the world of community. And so and
friendship in general. You have to be really careful where you use the word forever.
Yeah. Yeah. And in part of the group, it was, some families moved on to different churches, and that had a lot to do with it. Some moved out of the neighborhood, moved from different schools. We were all so close together, and we sort of separated apart, but still wanted to try to keep together.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't sustainable, and it was, super sad.
So what'd you do?
We sort of imploded, and that's the word I use. It's not really a great word, but we just kind of came like, it just ended.
It ended.
And we tried to stoke it, and it ended.
Yeah.
The guys continued to meet for a while, and then I sort of grew a little tired of that, and because for me, and this is somewhat harsh to say, but for me, community is not just meeting together twice a month. Like, I don't need that. I mean, I do need that, but what I need more is meeting together regularly and just being in each other's lives.
Yeah.
And it wasn't happening.
Yeah.
And so we'd come together, we'd pour our hearts out, and then I wouldn't see or talk to you for 2 weeks. That's like, to me, that felt like, it's not community.
It's like the group meeting time, instead of facilitating like an existing ongoing friendship, became the totality of that friendship.
We sort of idolized the meeting time as opposed to what the purpose of the meeting, of what we said we were about. And so the last couple of years has been really hard. My wife and I floated and really felt out of place and not connected.
Here, where you already are.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
While we're building this home that we live in, and we love the space, we love where we live, but we're just missing it a lot. And so we sort of connected to a couple other families who I felt like the Lord brought into our lives, and I kind of pressed into them of what they were wanting and looking for, and we felt like there's a mutual thing. And so in the last year, we've sort of started another small group of sorts, and it's been totally beautiful.
That's the thing that often ends up happening, right? It's like, there's sort of the disintegration, and then those individuals who are part of a thing kind of start their own thing. They want to replicate, which is good. And I think there's a little bit of a kind of evolutionary kind of gene of progress and process there, where like things die for the express purpose that its parts and those seeds are planted elsewhere. Like the seed has to break in order for the whole thing has to, like, there's a death necessary for things to get splintered off so that more life can actually take root.
I think part of it for me too is wrestling the pride of like, I'm always, one of the gifts that I feel like God has given my wife and I is we're pursuers.
Yeah.
And we pursue people. And part of it for us was just wrestling. Like, I want to be pursued. I don't want to be the guy pursuing again. And we just had to work through that. And we pursued these couple of families, and both of the families were like, felt the same way we did.
Yep.
And felt so blessed by being pursued. It was like, wow, we always start something and we didn't want to start something, but you're inviting us. The power of inviting someone in to something bigger than themselves. I feel like that's what my whole music career is right now. It has been of like, I just want to invite people into something bigger because that's what I want. I want someone to invite me into something bigger because there's always something bigger.
Yeah, there's something to be said for the loneliness that comes with being a leader. If you're actually a leader, naturally, you're always out front, and and being out front means there aren't people in front of you.
Yeah,
like it is lonely, and almost always. Yeah. And you're almost always the person who starts the thing and pursues and maintains the conversation.
Yeah. And there's beauty in that. I mean, there's a beautiful thing in that. And if you can get past I'm doing it again. Right.
Yeah.
And just see like that's how I'm wired. It's a beautiful thing. Like embrace that.
Are you still thinking long term? Like when you think about career stuff, do you still think long term, or like at this point is it let's do this year and see what happens next?
Dude, it's like let's do this day.
Oh really? We're in the granular.
I feel
is it pretty near that granular? That's like
this season it does sort of feel that way. I have no shows on the horizon. Yeah. Like I have nothing planned and I don't know what's next. So where you're hitting me right now is like I'm in a little bit of a raw place of I don't really know what's coming down the pipe.
What do you want?
I'm trying to figure that out.
Like, do you want to get back on the road?
I do. I do, but I think it will never look the same. I don't think anything's going to look the same.
No, nothing will ever look the same.
And to that's beautiful. Like that excites me of like, we don't have to live at the pace we lived at before.
Good. Yeah.
To survive.
Yeah.
Part of it's fun and part of it can be seasonal, but like the amount of slowness that I've been afforded to be with my wife, to be with my 10-year-old, to like it, I would trade that for nothing. I mean, it's been such a gift, just a reboot.
Yeah.
It's been beautiful. But I don't honestly, I think what I need to do is create, which scares the hell out of me in this season.
Really?
Because I feel like there's so much I want to say and I feel like I have nothing to say.
I do.
Like there's so many songs that I want to write and I'm like, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
So I just need to start.
Well, thank God you got the time.
Yeah. Because
since you're not traveling.
Yeah, I know. Oh my gosh. I think that's what the creating for me, writing songs, not content for social media, is where I will thrive. I love writing. I love that work, that hard hands in the mud work of like building something. I think that's what needs to happen next.
Which is what started the thing to begin with.
Yeah, I wish I could remember that far back. No, I think that's it. I was 23. Golly.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly yesterday.
No, it wasn't.
No.
But yeah, that's a good thing. I mean, doing that throwback live stream and remembering that of like going back, and recapturing. Again, I think it comes down to just inviting people into a bigger story. I want to invite myself in. So I think God is inviting us into a bigger story. and the digital platform and social media helps in some ways, but it's also a little bit narrow. It's not a big enough story. My friend Yako, who's a brilliant writer and teacher and professor and pastor and speaker, he's awesome. He says that we live hit single to hit single, and we often miss the big symphony that God's writing because we're just living for those hit little moments, those little posts, and we get lost in the weeds of that and don't see the greater symphony that he's writing, the greater story, the greater narrative.
Wow.
And that's good, especially in the weeds of 2020 wrapped digital numbers. Like, to not get lost in that weed, but to go, no, 26 years, faithful. I'm still doing it. It's not important.
That's good.
I think that's the wrestle. I think that's the wrestle that I'm in currently. That not only in this season, but like this particular day, the last couple of days.
Yeah.
Like, I need to remember that and be raw with it and be vulnerable with it. I sat down with my family over dinner the other night, the 2020 wrapped day when I went down the tubes into that darkness. And I was like, and at dinner I said, hey, I'm feeling really discouraged. So I told my 10-year-old son. And it was really sweet because he was a part of each Throwback Thursday show. And he said, no, Dad, people still buy your CDs. I've seen you put out orders. People still buy your CDs.
Wow.
Like, thank you.
I love that.
Yeah.
The 10-year-old saving the day.
That was a good just reminder for me.
I love that.
Yeah. It just felt like we have to be real with our kids and vulnerable and transparent in that way and teach them.
Yeah.
You know?
Would you thank you for your time?
Oh man, thank you. It's good to be with you, and a gift for what you're doing. So
thanks, man.
Yeah.
And thank you for listening to this episode of the Outsea Podcast. If you would like to follow up with Christopher Williams, you can visit him at christopherw.com. He's also available by way of listening anywhere music is played. If you would like to become one of the people who helps this podcast do what it does, you can visit me at patreon.com/Justin McRoberts and join our team. We would love to have you. Until next time.